So when you think about the First World War, you just think about trenches. You think about trench warfare, trench foot, digging trenches. Why were the trenches such a big part of World War One?
Michael Douglas, my old mate from The One Show, celebrity hairdresser and obsessed by World War One.
So the Western Front, which stretches from the English Channel right the way to the Alps, over 400-mile trenches the whole way. Germans on one side, Allies on the other. Absolutely. And they had to dig those trenches because it was so dangerous to be above ground.
Yeah, but surely it's dangerous to dig a trench in the middle of a battlefield.
It is dangerous to dig a trench, but the most dangerous thing of all is to be standing in a field above the ground. And that's why they had to spend more than 3 years in those trenches, effectively. Very little movement. It was stalemate.
But I still don't understand. When they stormed the beaches on D-Day, they did that in a couple of days or something. Here they've, what, 3 years? They're in trenches?
A lot of people think, oh, God, they must have been so stupid. All those generals must have been idiots. In fact, it is extremely difficult. Some of the cleverest people in the world working on this problem, and it took them years to sort out. They were stuck in the trenches, they were keeping their heads down, and they just couldn't get across the field. And today, I've brought you here to explain why that is.
Great. I can't wait.
So basically, this is a classic let's get across the other side of the field. Should be easy.
No worries. Ow!
That was brilliant.
Horrible, that.
Well, but that accurately shows, I'm afraid, what would have happened to you in 1914. Every single German soldier's got a rifle. He can kill a man at 400 or 500 metres, no problem. He can shoot 10 times a minute. And above all, there are lots and lots of Germans. Millions of them in the German army. So these hedgerows would have been crawling with German soldiers. So it's not as easy crossing that field as you might think.
Yeah.
So basically, go back out there, run around, crawl around, try shooting, do whatever you can. Let's see how close you can get.
Bit.
Ooh. Ah. Ooh. Fair play to Michael. He is taking a lot of punishment.
Of course, if this was World War One, he'd have been cut to pieces by now.
This area in front of you, as Michael is experiencing, would have been artillery. He's coming back now. He's looking a bit dejected.
It's pointless, this. Well, you're right. That was hard, right?
Now, give me that. I told you that rifle wouldn't be much use.
What's this?
That is more useful than the rifle on the Western Front. That is an entrenching tool. It's basically a small spade. Because as you've seen, you're not much use in the open, so you've got to get underground, wait for nightfall, and that is why trench warfare begins. So go for it. Come on, get digging.
So cheeky, I tell you.
You've got to get underground. You've got to dig yourself a hole. And you know, the good thing is, Michael, earlier when you were getting killed, I got a JCB and dig a trench, so don't worry about that. Come on, this way.
Somebody said
I guess the most obvious thing to do is just wait till it's dark, because obviously they could see you out there in the light. So do you want another go now?
Yeah, well, it's going to be easier in the dark.
Take the battle to the enemy, my friend?
No, it's the nuns in the church. That's what I want to save, man. Yeah? OK.
Becky's coming back.
Blimey, O'Reilly.
Yeah,
It's wild out there, man.
I should have told you, basically, both sides realised you could illuminate the battlefield quite well using those flares, so they could make it almost bright as day. So attacking at night is also a big challenge.
I mean, I'm one man, and when you take 10,000 men,
and send them across there. Surely, I mean, it's a bit harsh, but surely they'd break through, would they not?
Yeah, you know, they tried that. Unfortunately, the methods of killing by World War I were so effective that you could almost have people bumper to bumper and you'd pretty much be guaranteed to kill them all.
So how else then? I mean, presumably you could dig tunnels, could you? You could...
Good point. There were thousands of guys digging tunnels from both sides. Unfortunately, the Germans realised that. You'd have these tunnels meeting each other, battles going on underground, people trying to blow up each other's tunnels. It's complete
Boom.
Planes had only been flying for a few years,
Okay.
just over a decade. They didn't have the capability of dropping bombs accurately on people.
Now, I appreciate these trenches were quite wide, but why don't you just go round them and in on the back?
Big problem with the Western Front is it's a continuous belt of trenches like this for over 400 miles. The English Channel's at one end, so you can't send everyone swimming around the edge. And the other end, neutral Switzerland, very mountainous country, and it's neutral, so you can't invade Switzerland. So you've got no choice. You're penned in on the Western Front. You've got to go through bombs, shells, bullets, gas, tanks. There's the variety of weaponry that made the battlefields of the First World War such a murderous place. But there was one other weapon system of sorts, an absolutely massive impact on the fighting. And that was wire.
Well, it's not impenetrable yet.
Happy days if you happen to be making barbed wire in 1914. Millions of miles of the stuff would be needed to line the Western Front. In World War I, mass warfare went hand in hand with mass production.
So this style of barbed wire entanglement is pretty much the style that was used at the beginning of the war. It's a bit like an agricultural fence back home. It would have slowed people down, tricky to get through. Ow. A nasty obstacle. Oh, I just punctured my welly. Damn it. The British pretty quickly realised that the trouble with these big fences of barbed wire is that it might stop the Germans getting at them, but it stopped them getting at the Germans. So they invented this idea. They built it just near their own trenches, so that if the Germans did attack, they'd still be slowed down trying to get through. But it meant that if the British attacked, they could release some smoke and they could advance through their own barbed wire and out into no man's land. By 1917, the Germans had decided pretty much to go on the defensive on the Western Front. That meant they didn't have to worry about their troops going forward, which is why they would use barbed wire like this. Huge mounds of it, piled up in no man's land, designed to stop the Allies getting through and attacking their line. This was brutally effective. Every time I'm confronted with barbed wire, I'm always amazed that something that looks so scrawny and insubstantial can have such a huge impact. I mean, I look at this and I think I should be able to get through this. I can see through it, and yet it's practically impenetrable. It's like being confronted with a huge granite wall. It's amazing that this thing that was mass-produced, was lo-fi, it was cheap, had a huge impact on the way the First World War was fought.